for joining us. We're really excited to be able to talk about the JPEID tool today. So we will begin with a few introductions. First, again, I am Lara Malikoff. I am with ICF, and we are the new reporting TA providers for the Jobs Plus grantees reporting. And we're very excited to be supporting you on that. If you would, those of you who are joining us from the Jobs Plus grantee THAs, we'd love to hear who's here. So if you could use the chat function that Kate just described, and just type in your name, the THA that you're with, your role, and what cohort you are from Jobs Plus grantee cohort. And that'll give us a sense of who's here, and we'd like to hear from you. So go ahead and do that. And while you are typing in your name and information, I would like to introduce Isaac Dozier, who is with HUD. I'm sure you all know him, and he will just say a couple of words to get us started.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being on the call today. It's been a long time coming. A lot of you have asked for additional support on JPEID overall and specifically the tool. So we're really happy and excited to now have ICF reporting TA team on board. Today is going to be the beginning of a lot of conversations. It's iterative, it's easy to learn these things as we continue to work through them. Once we get through today's presentation, feel free to continue to reach out to ICF and to HUD if you need help. But we're excited. We're getting started. And Lee Ben Rai will be on the call shortly. But if you need to reach either one of us, you know how to reach us through email. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Isaac. And now that folks have had a chance to type in who they are, where they're from, I'll call out some of the THAs just to recognize you guys are here. I'm seeing Akron and Lowell, and see who else. Lots of folks. I see Rockford, I see Jacksonville, Chicago, Houston, Detroit, Portsmouth. Thanks all for joining. I see Goldsboro, many, many more. Denver and Lucas, and we're really happy to have all you guys with us. Rock Hill, Brunswick, Roanoke, Lynn, did I say Detroit? Let's see who else. So lots of folks from many of the Jobs Plus grantee PHAs. So welcome again, and thank you for joining us. So feel free to keep it coming. And meanwhile, I'm going to give you another assignment to type into the chat. As you know, we are the reporting TA providers. I know that for the Jobs Plus program, reporting is very important. So let's talk a little bit about why reporting and data collection is so important. Think of this as just an icebreaker, just to kind of get your brains working, to get you thinking a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and, if you have some ideas of why data collection is so important, type those into the chat and we'll just do a little quick icebreaker brainstorm. Great. Sharing results and continuing funding. Really good reason to do good data collection. To understand the needs of your community and the effectiveness of service delivery. Great. Any other ideas? To monitor program outcomes and show best practices. Great. Again, to see if the grant is effective. To have accountability, effectiveness, and sustainability. So definitely to kind of see if the program and the work that you all are doing is effective, to keep track of your progress, Yeah, tracking data for funding, outcomes, great. Another key one that I haven't seen yet, but I think you might all have in the backs of your minds, are to identify challenges before they become major problems and be able to address them, improve your outcomes for your residents, and you know, track your progress against the benchmarks that are laid out. So really good ideas. Just wanted to you know, get us all thinking and remind us why we're supporting you guys in terms of data collection. So I think last one, data allows organizations to determine the cause and effect, track progress, establish relationship, determine causes, gives you something to measure. So great thoughts, keep them coming if you're so inspired. But with that, we will go ahead and move it right along to our agenda. So today, we will talk about what the JPEID is. We won't talk much about this. We will just address it very briefly. As you know, our focus here today is really on what is the JPEID tool, how to access it, how to use it, and some key things to look out for on that. So that is what we will turn to next. We will address how to access PA that we provide for the JPEID tool. We will do a demo of that tool. We'll kind of remind you guys how to use it, how it works, and just kind of refresh your memories on that. Introduce it if you've never used it before. We will summarize some key things for you to look out for, some reminders, some troubleshooting. And then, as our host mentioned, we will have some time later on for a Q&A session. So that's when you will be able to either ask your questions in the chat or ask them verbally by coming off of mute. Some of the questions that you may have may be pretty specific to your grant and your tool. So there may be cases where we'll likely need to follow up with you after the call to provide some more specific PA. So know that we'll do our best to answer your questions as they come through, but if we need to follow up with you, we will make sure to mark down what the question is, and we'll make sure to follow up with you after the call. And then we'll talk about what comes next. So a few things in terms of getting caught up with data reporting and how that's all going to work. So we'll go over that a little bit today. So again, the JPEID, what is it? It is the Jobs Plus Earned Income Disallowance or Disregard. As you all know, one of the three core components of the Jobs Plus program. It allows tenants to increase earnings without rent increasing right away. Excludes 100% of the increased income attributable to new earnings for up to 48 months or for the term of the Jobs Plus grant. So just a very brief overview of what it is. As I said, we won't be going into detail on that in this call, but there is an opportunity to learn more. I believe the JPEID 101 overview that you see linked here, we will actually follow up with after this call with an updated link that gives you a newer updated version of that overview. So you can watch it and remind yourselves, refresh your memory about the details of the JPEID itself. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us over to the JPEID tool. So that is the tool that collects the data about the enrolled households over the life of the grant and then calculates the JPEID amount. And this amount is what you would report as part of your quarterly reporting, along with a variety of other metrics. So today's session will show you the latest version of the tool, which many of you are already using. It's version 37. As a reminder, it is an Excel-based tool. It is macro-enabled. So basically, macro-enabled just means you can enter data on the front end and it completes the calculations for you. So you don't have to do anything related to formulas in Excel. But do note that it is an Excel-based tool. And each of you has your own version of that tool. You have your own file, and it is the same file that you use from quarter to quarter over the life of your Jobs Plus grant. So you'll just update it each quarter or even month as you're collecting your data. There are two tool options. One is for flat rent and one is for ceiling rent. So depending on which one you use, you should already be using the right one. But if we find that maybe you're using the wrong one, we can always switch you up. Now we are going to just do a couple of quick polls just to get a sense of where folks are at in terms of your use of the JPEID tool and how it's going. So let's go ahead and bring up the first poll. And what you're going to do is you're going to read the poll question, you're going to select your answer, and then you're going to hit submit on the bottom right of that poll box. So the first question, and I will mention the polls are anonymous, so do go ahead and answer it truthfully. Are you using the JPEID tool now? If the answer is yes, click A. If you're not using it yet, don't be afraid, click B. Our job is to make sure that we get you on board and make sure we get you the support you need to be able to use that tool effectively. Go ahead and select your answer. If you do not see the poll, there should be an option on the bottom right-hand side of your screen to bring that up, and the poll will appear on the right side of your screen. So go ahead, select your answer, and hit submit. And let's leave the poll open for just a couple of more moments. And then we will go ahead and close the poll. So a moment to take a look at the answers. It looks like many of you are using the JPEID tool already, but it looks like there are a few of you, a handful who are not using it yet. So if you are not using the tool already, do pay close attention to this call, learn what it's all about, how to get started using it, and then reach out to us at jobsplusreporting@icf.com, and we will get you the right version of the tool that you need, and we will get you started using that tool. So for those of you who answered yes, you are using the JPEID tool. Let's bring up the second poll and ask you guys how it's going. So again, totally anonymous, so don't be afraid to tell us what you think. Feel free, if more than one of those answers applies to you, feel free to select more than one. So how is using the JPEID tool going? Is it going great? Select A. Is it going okay, but you've got some challenges to work through? Select B. If you've already reached out to us or you are planning on reaching out to us for support, select C. And if you really need some detailed training on using it, that's something that we can definitely provide one-on-one. So pick your answers. Let's leave the poll open for just a couple of more moments, and then we'll go ahead and close it and take a look. All right, let's go ahead and close that poll. All right, so it looks like a few people on all fronts. A few people say, yep, it's going great. But a few more say, you know, you have some challenges, you need some support or some training. So we will make sure that you get what you need. So thank you for participating. That helps us understand where we need to go from here in terms of getting you some TA for using that tool. So let us move forward, and we will go on to the next slide. So if you wouldn't mind advancing us to the next slide. Again, as many of you have said, you might have some challenges using the tool. So we're here to help you. If you run into any issues, email us at jobsplusreporting@icf.com. If you can, it's helpful to attach the most recent version of your tool. That'll really help us pinpoint exactly what might be going on and what issue you might be facing. Some issues may be addressed by converting your tool to the newest version, and that's something that the ICF TA provider can do for you. So just let us know if we're having any issues. Just feel free to send us an email. So with that, we are going to go ahead and do a demo of the tool. So I'll mention that on this call, we likely have participants with a range of experiences using the tool. So some of you have been using it for a while. Some of you are brand new to it. Maybe your PHA has been using it, but you yourself are new to using it. So we will kind of try to cover as much of that as we can. Some of this demo will relate to the tool setup, which we'll kind of need to do in order to really show you how it works. But I am going to turn it over now to my colleague, Nitan. He is also part of the ICF Jobs Plus reporting TA team. And he's gonna walk us through both how to get set up, how to add and update households as you continue to enter your data over. So with that, I'll turn it over. Nitan, take it away.
Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon to everyone, or good morning if you're still on the West Coast. I'm going to be sharing my screen for this session and typing in a bunch of information. So just for this part of the session today, I'll be going camera off, but then later on for the Q&A, I will turn it back on. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Now, to increase the speed of the tool, we do recommend that you exit out of all other programs that you have on your computer, which is what I've done today. Also, most agencies are going to be using flat rent to calculate JPID. So for today's session, we went ahead and chose a flat rent version of the tool. But if your agency uses ceiling rent, that's certainly something that we can provide the correct tool for. So when you enter the tool, the first thing that you'll see is this instruction sheet. We strongly suggest that you read through the instructions before using the tool for the first time. There's lots of helpful information here about how the tool works and what you'll need to look out for to ensure adequate use of the tool. At the very top of the first tab of this instruction sheet, you will see some instructions on how to enable macros. As Laura mentioned, this workbook uses macros, which for those who may not know is just an advanced Excel coding language. As I go through today's demo, you'll see how the tool allows us to do different features, including adding, editing, deleting records, without having to touch any of the formulas. On the right-hand side of this instruction sheet, and I'll scroll over just a little bit, you'll see some information here about how to optimize for compatibility. This is a settings feature in Excel that you should also do when you first use the tool, and we'll be following up afterwards with a more detailed step-by-step instruction sheet for how to enable macros, so this instruction is on top, and then how to optimize your compatibility settings. And we'll be sending you that after the webinar today. So I'm going to hop over to the background sheet, which is our next sheet here. And the first thing that you'll see is a number of different cells that are highlighted in green. Those are all the things that you have to make sure that you type in. So there are, like I said, some things that are optional that are not highlighted in green, but the ones that are in green are absolutely a must to make the tool work. The nice thing about the background tab is that you only really need to input in that information once. Unless for whatever reason something changes, you'll only have to do it once, and then you can just forget about it whenever you're using this tool again. So just for today's session, I'm going to be making up some data, but we do strongly encourage you guys to take your time and make sure that you're accurately putting information in here when you're using it, because if you have to make changes later, it can lead to errors in JPID calculations depending on what you change. So bear with me. I'm going to try to type as quickly as I can here. So the first thing I'm doing is just the grant number. And I'm actually going to zoom in just a little bit in case folks aren't able to see these fields as well as I can here with my large screen. All right, making up a grant manager, and it's of course prepared by me today. And okay. All right. One important note here is that in the background sheet, you need to select your fiscal year end. When you do, these other tabs, so you have fiscal year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on, they have some information specific to every month. And so the moment you select a fiscal year end, it's going to shift the order of when the months are written in those fiscal year tabs. So it's really important that you're choosing the correct month, because if you afterwards change the fiscal year end to a different end date, it can, like I said, lead to some calculation errors. If you don't know your agency's fiscal year end, that's something that you could check with your accounting department on. So for today's session, I'm just going to choose March 31st as our fiscal year end. Okay, and then I'm going to type our development name. Okay, and then the development number as well. Okay, so a couple of things here before I proceed to the next part of the background sheet. You'll see that I had to put this development number or AMP number. Just for today's session, I'm only using one, but you do have the option to put up to 10 AMP numbers. If you only have one, you can just leave the rest blank. Otherwise, you can certainly add information. And then below that, you also have the option to add the site names. This is not something that you have to add in to make the tool work, but it's something that, of course, you should put in if the development has more than one site name. In this case, our development only has one site name, so I am going to leave that part blank. And then I'm going to put the minimum rent of 50. Now, I need to select the cohort, and before I select it, in a moment, you'll see that as soon as I select what cohort I'm a part of, these fiscal year tabs will change names. So instead of saying 1, 2, and 3, and so on, it's going to have years. So if you don't know your cohort, there is a little cheat sheet here in the side that can help you figure out what cohort you're a part of. Our housing authority for today is a part of cohort number 3. And then you see that it changed to 2017, 2018, and so on. The last thing that's important for me to note here about the background tab is that you have to select this checkbox here in cell A35 to essentially say, hey, I've reviewed all the information here, I updated it, it's all accurate, it's good to go. You have to select this in order for the whole workbook to work, and in order to be able to key in information. So with that, oh, and I should also note it's a really good practice to save the workbook frequently when you're using it, which is what I'm going to be doing all throughout today's session, is just saving it a bunch of times. All right, so just very briefly going to touch on these fiscal year sheets, but it is something that I'll be bringing up a number of different times throughout today's session. The fiscal year tabs store lots and lots of data. You have data about the unit information, household JPID enrollment and move-in dates, ages at JPID enrollment, income, and much more. This information is used to calculate the JPID amount, and the data in these sheets are broken down by months. So in this part here, you have a section on unit information. This yellow here is about baseline information. And then if I scroll to the right, you're going to see information specific to each month of the fiscal year. Each of the months has its own designated color. So that's how the data is broken down, essentially by months and ultimately by the color groups for that month. All of these sheets look the same. So the 2017 sheet is going to look the same as the 2018 sheet and so on and so forth, but they're going to have specific information for those fiscal years. You're not going to have to worry about these sheets too much. They are locked for editing, and so they're here more so for your reference, and you are going to be able to put in information in there and delete it and edit it, but not directly through these sheets, rather through the menu tab, which is what I'm going to show you guys next. Okay, so the menu sheet is your home base. This is where you're going to be mostly using the tool. It's where you're going to be spending your majority of the time whenever you're doing using this JPEID tool. There are a number of features available for you here in the menu sheet. And let me just pull that up a little bit so you can see the full thing. So there are a number of features that you have here available for you. To begin today's demo, we need to add a household's information. So this is the first time for this public housing agency using the tool. They need to key in some household information. To do this, you'll essentially need to click on the entry form button. And so I'm going to do that now. Now, the entry form uses all sorts of colors to help you through its completion. There is a color key located at the top of the form. I'm going to be going over these colors during today's session, but I do encourage you guys to look at that if you're ever confused about what the colors mean. So the green is where you'll actually be keying in the data. The orange is just for your reference. The blue fields are calculated fields, so you don't really need to worry about them too much, but they are important for the tool to be able to function. The yellow fields are locked. As you can see, I'm trying to click on these yellow fields right now, and nothing is happening. I can click on the green one and select things, but not so much with the other yellow fields. That's for now. As you start to keying information, some of these yellow fields will begin to change into green so that we can ultimately key in information into them. And then the last color type that you might see, not in today's session, but you might see when you're using the tool is red for alert. So these are fields that the tool will highlight and that you must complete or fix if you haven't done so already. And that the moment you do fix them or complete them, then you'll be able to submit the entry form. All right, so I'm going to select the calendar year of 2017, and I'm going to select the month of January, and then we're going to make up a household. Let's say 1111. This is just the household ID number that I'm using, and again, I totally made up one. Something that I did want to flag for you all is that right now all of these fields are still locked. I can't do anything into that. Sometimes when you're using the entry form, you're actually going to have to click on the tabs button in your keyboard. And the moment you click on the tab button in your keyboard and you move out of that cell, then a bunch of other things are going to turn green and you'll be able to key in, which is going to happen right now. All right. So I'm going to key in some more information for us here. I'm going to choose the AMP number that I wrote earlier. I'm going to totally make up a building number and building entrance and a unit number. All right, so in this household, we have 2 adult members. So I'm going to select 2 here. And the date that the first household member enrolled in the JPEID program is 1/1/2017. Okay. Now here, in this first section, you need to key in information specific to the household. So it's asking for the total annual income before JPEID. So I'm going to put 16,000. A couple of important notes on that. Do make sure that you're putting income before any exclusions for JPEID or EID. So it's before any of those exclusions, just put in the income. The other thing that I want to flag about that, and you'll notice how it plays into effect in this entry form in just a little bit, is that income is both earned and unearned income. So you write the full amount for that household, both earned and unearned, in this first cell here. All right, so I'm going to move right along for us here. I'll put the allowances and then utility allowance of 450. Okay. All right. One more thing that I wanted to note for you all here in the household section before I move on to the next is that, yes, you are seeing already some things that are yellow and locked. That is the baseline information. So the baseline here is just referring to the first time that this household joined, enrolled in their JPID program. Because I am keying in information for this household for the first time, January 17, which is when I said they enrolled in this program, is the baseline. That is the beginning of when this household first enrolled. So you'll see that when I wrote 16,000, it's also writing 16,000 here because that's the first time around. But after a while, you'll see that it might be different because it's, again, just showing the information when they first came in, when they first enrolled in the JPID program. All right. So I'm now going to key in information for adult household number 1. So that's the head of the household. And this is just asking for their earned income. So like I said, different than the unearned plus earned, which we spoke about earlier. This is just the earned. So I'm going to put 10,000 for their earned income. And then the other adult member, I'm going to put A for other adult, and I am going to say that their earned income is $5,000. So you'll see the total earned income is $15,000. The total income of the household is $16,000. That's because there's an extra $1,000 that is unearned. All right. Another thing that I did want to flag for you guys in this individual section before I head to the next part, as you know, at the very top, I selected 2 adult household members. This spreadsheet allows for up to 4 household members. So if, for instance, a household has 5 adult members, which is not the case for our demo today, but if that is the case for you guys at any point, please just include in this part here the adult members that are enrolled in JPID. And if for whatever reason in that example, all 5 are enrolled in JPID, then we ask that you just combine the data for 2 individuals in the field for household member number 4. All right, I'm going to roll right along here in the entry form. So for this baseline information, it needs to know the age when this household member first enrolled in JPID. So I'm going to write 30, and then the annual earned income at enrollment. So that's the same amount that I just put up there. And you only need to do this once because, like I said, that's the baseline. You'll see that I can only write something here for the first household member, not the second one. And that's because I need to select this check mark here. So just because we added a household member in this entry form earlier, that doesn't mean that they're actually enrolled in JPID. This is where you get to say, hey, they are enrolled in JPID, so I'm selecting this button here, and then I can key in information for that household as well. So I'm going to say that they enrolled into JPID on the same date, 1/1/2017, and that this household member is 25, and when they first joined, they were earning $5,000, okay? And then this part here is just asking when they joined the household. Later on, you could also say when they left the household, but we're going to be saying when they joined for now. So both of them joined 1/1/2015. Okay, we're almost done with the entry form. Here in the bottom right section, you have the ability to click on Calculate Values, and then that's going to show you a little bit more information about this household, their JPID, the tenant rent, and you know, a little bit more information beyond that as well. This is to help you figure out if the information that you keyed in is accurate, but of course you could also scroll on top and just double check that it's all accurate before going on to the next section, which you do by clicking on the Submit button here in the bottom left. So I'm going to click on that now. Okay, and what you see, the moment I click submit, it's now showing me a blank entry form. So I'm actually going to exit out of this blank entry form. And when I do, that fiscal year tab that I showed you guys earlier, where every row was blank, now it has this household that I just added with all sorts of information going to the right, which I won't scroll over for today's demo, but it's certainly there again for your reference. So I'm going to take us right back to the menu sheet. Now, in this particular case, we have one household. Let's say you have just this one household or perhaps multiple households, and you want to carry their information from 1 month to the next. So you want to say that they're continuing to be enrolled in the JPEID program. There are a few different ways to do this, and I'm going to be going over all of those ways during today's demo. So the first method in order to continue to copy records from 1 month to the next and to make sure that this household is still, their JPID amount is still being counted, is by clicking on the entry form again. So I'm going to do that. And again, you need to select a couple of things at the beginning. So current year is still 2017, but now I want to key in information for the next month. So instead of January, I'm going to select February. And then I'm going to select that same household ID. And again, remember, as I said at the beginning, you got to click Tab on your keyboard to make other things show. Now there's this new question that we didn't need to complete before, but it's asking us, is the household still in this unit? And I'm going to say yes for today's demo. So I selected that, and then other information showed up as well. So if the information was the same between month to month, I can just scroll to the bottom of this entry form and just click submit. But in this case, I'd like to say that actually the household's income has increased. So instead of 16,000, now their total income between unearned and earned is 21,000. So I'm going to put that there. Otherwise, everything else is the same. Now, the moment I do that, it's giving me a warning. Hey, you change the household's total income. Please just double check that that's accurate. So I'm going to click OK, because it is accurate for our demo. And then instead of saying that this second household member earned $5,000, now in this next month, they're earning $10,000. And it's going to give you that same notification, hey, you change it on the individual level. Please make sure that the total household is the same. So again, I'm going to click OK because it is accurate for us. All other information looks good to me. I am going to click on Calculate Values just to check. Oh, look at that. JPID amount is now being calculated for this household because there was an increase in income. Everything looks good. I am going to click Submit. Okay. And so now on the back end, the household's data copied from 1 month over to the next. So from January over to February, but it had that difference in income and therefore the difference in JPID. So I'm going to go back to the menu. Another way to copy households information is by clicking on the Copy Records feature. So I'm going to click on that now. In our use case, we only had one household member, so that's really easy to go into the entry form and just make a couple of edits and you're done. But I'd imagine that that's not the case for most of the housing agencies here on the call. You probably have lots and lots of household members. So make that transition from 1 month to the next a little bit easier. There's this Copy Records feature. In this particular case, I only have one household member, so I'm just going to put their household ID, or one household, I should say, so I'm only going to put their household ID there on top. But if you have more than one household ID, which I'm sure is going to be the case, then you can just do a comma-separated list of all of the households whose data you wish to copy from 1 month to the next. So I have this, like I said, this 1111 household. I'm going to select the month of February because remember, we already copied data from January to February. So now I want to copy it from February onto the next month. I'm going to select February. I'm going to do the current year of 2017. The cool thing about the Copy Records feature is that it allows me to be able to copy into multiple months at a time. I'm going to select March, April, and May. And then for year, I'm going to do 2017. And then I'm going to do copy month. And that quickly, it copied our data from February all the way to March, April, and May. And keep in mind, the data that we copied from February had this household earning a little bit more income, so it's going to show that on those months, while in January, it's still going to show us that baseline amount. A third and final way to copy records from one month to the next, and certainly our preferred way, is this add month feature. So what I'm going to do here is for the add month feature, I'm going to select the current year of 2017. I'm going to select May because, again, for today's demo, I copied using the copy records all the way to May, so that's our most recent data. And then you'll see automatically the add month feature is telling you, well, the next month after May is June of 2017, right? So I'm going to select add month now that I've changed the date range here. And it's just saying, are you sure you wish to copy this month's data? And I'm going to say yes. And just like that, we now have data all the way into June, copied from May to June. Now, I just showed you all some different ways of copying records, each with their benefits and downsides depending on what you're looking to do. And again, our preference is the add month feature that I showed you all last. But let's say our January data is accurate, our February data is accurate, even our March data is accurate, but then in April, this household started to get more income. So once you've copied over the data, all you need to do is just go back to the entry form, just like I had shown you guys for the month of February. And I'll select current year 2017. I'll select April because that's when there was the change. I'll select 1111. I still have to say it's the same household. And then in here, I can just go in and change the income or allowances or whatever other piece of information you need to change for that month. So really recommend that you all use the add month feature, and then you can go in and manually, through the entry form, change any data specific to that household. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. A couple of more things that I wanted to go over for today's demo. Every quarter, you're going to need to use this tool to submit a quarterly report to HUD. And to do this, you simply have to navigate right back to the menu sheets, which we're already at. And you'll need to use this quarterly report feature. I already have current year 2017 quarter one selected, which is excellent. That's what I needed. And just before clicking on it, I want to flag for you all that what's going to happen is that it's going to create a new tab here to the right that you'll see in just a moment. So I'm going to click on it now. And here we go. We now have a new tab that wasn't there before, and it's called Quarterly Report. There's lots of information here in the quarterly report, as you can see. There's information about newly enrolled participants, number of participants receiving JPEID, and even the total amount of JPEID for every household in every quarter, up to the points that you've keyed in data. So as you can see, I have data for both quarter one because I, started that out, and then I copied some onto the next months, and eventually I got us to a point where it's in that next quarter, which is what this data is showing. So lots of super helpful information here. Once you've reviewed the report, made sure it's all good to go, you can click on the Save Report button, save it onto your computer, and forward it over. Another report that you might have to do, that you will have to do, sorry about that, once a year is the annual rent report. So similarly to the quarterly report, I'm just going to choose the correct, date range. So it's fiscal year of 2017. You'll notice the rent report goes by fiscal year. The quarterly report goes by current year. So a little bit different features there. So I'm going to click on the rent report, and just like the quarterly report, once it loads for us, it's going to create this new tab that wasn't there before called rent report, and it's going to show us lots of helpful information, and you can also save that report. One important note on both of these reports, the quarterly and the rent report, these are static. So they don't include any formulas, and they only reflect the information at the time that you clicked on the quarterly report or the rent report buttons in the menu sheet. So what that means for you all is that if you've updated the data since you've clicked on that quarterly report tab, button, I should say, you'll need to go back to the menu sheet and click on it again to make sure that it's showing the most up-to-date data that you've updated since you've used that feature the last time. So the final feature that I wanted to go over for today's session is the delete records feature. So sometimes you may accidentally key in the wrong information for a household, or perhaps you added a household that should not be included in your JPEID calculations. You can use the delete records button to remove parts or all of the information for that household. So I'm going to be clicking on that right now. And I need to write at the top, like we've done for the other types of features, the household ID, which is 1111 for today's session. And then it's asking me, what do you want to delete? In this case, I'm just going to choose, I'd like to delete the entire record for this household. If I clicked on that, and when I click on delete, it says data is successfully deleted. And when I navigate back to the fiscal year tab, you will see that first row is completely empty. So that is pretty much it as far as the features of the JPEID tool. That concludes the demo part of today's session. I'm now going to turn it right back over to Laura for some key things to look out for.
All right, well, thank you, Nitan. I hope that that demo was helpful for you guys as a refresher or an intro to using the JPEID tool. The next segment, we were going to just kind of highlight some of the key things to look out for, some reminders. But before we do that, I do acknowledge that we've got a couple of questions in the chat. So we're going to try to take a look at those and answer those for you. And then we will go over the key things to look out for, the reminders, and then we'll have more time for questions after that. So I'll do the first part of answering these, and then I'm going to invite Nitan if you have any additional comments related to these questions, feel free to chime in. So the first question from Andre, it looks like in your tool, the monthly rent after JPEID is showing a negative number, and you're wondering if that's correct. So the short answer is, to my understanding, that should not be the case. So if the rent after JPEID is showing a negative number, it likely means that there's something going on with the data that is entered for that particular household. So you'll want to look through the fiscal year tabs in the row for the particular household where that might be happening, and try to pinpoint why that might be the case. So I'm gonna invite Nitan to add any additional insight if you've got any.
Yeah, you're spot on, Laura, with that. The information that I showed you guys today was definitely not what's going to happen on a case-to-case basis. It's not realistic in any sort of way. So the calculations are working as they should, but there's some errors on the data entry side of things. And again, that was because totally made up numbers. So you're spot on that is certainly how I would go by handling that.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Nitan. So yeah, if that was an observation of the data that we were entering for the demo today, you're exactly right, would not be a negative number. So just something to look out for as you are entering your data. If you're seeing any negative numbers, that's kind of a flag for you to kind of check your data. Another question from Nick. sometimes you are getting an error message that says the household ID is not found when you're copying records. So you're using the copy records feature and you're getting this household ID is not found error message, even though when you look back at the fiscal year tab, it's there. And so I guess I will begin by saying my first recommendation would be if you're using the copy records feature and you're not able to find a household ID, you might want to try to use a different feature for copying those records and see if that works for you. For example, the add month feature, but I'm going to turn it back to Nitan for some more detail on that.
Sure. Thank you, Laura. So that is an issue that we've noticed in an earlier version of the tool where the household ID is not being found. It's something that we were able to fix by transferring folks to the new version of the tool. So that might also be a factor in play for your use case. But if that's, so certainly encourage you to reach out to us if you haven't already so that we can work through that issue. But I suspect that it's just a matter of transferring you over, and then from there, it should be fixed. And if not, then probably the second best thing, like Laura mentioned, was to try a different feature. We did notice with the add month feature for some folks that if there's some missing data around age at enrollment, that for JPEID, that feature may not work. So that, again, could also be a factor at play, but really would encourage you to reach out to us if you haven't already so that we can try to diagnose the issue and support you.
All right, thanks. And I'm seeing lots of questions come in the chat. So I think what we're going to do is let's take one more question in the chat. We'll do some quick things to look out for, reminders, and then we'll open it back up and use the rest of our time for Q&A. So a question in from Andre, and I wonder if this is one that I can send over in your direction, Isaac. The question is, which one of these reports is submitted when requesting reimbursement to the Housing Authority from BLI 9210? And that sounds like it might be a question for HUD and you, Isaac.
Okay, so when you have the tool, when you run the rent report, that is the backup for your JPEID voucher request.
All right, thank you, Isaac. Appreciate that. So I know that there are several other questions in the chat right now, and we will get back to you on those. So just sit tight for a couple of minutes while we go through some of these key things to look out for, and then we'll get right back to you with answering questions. So Nitan mentioned all of these things. So these set of next few slides are designed to just kind of be reminders to you so that if you don't have a chance to re-listen to the whole demo, you might be able to reference these slides and kind of remind yourself of some of these key things. So Nitan mentioned about enabling macros and optimizing for compatibility. So we've added kind of the quick steps for doing that here. Once you do these once, you should be good moving forward, but they're always something worth keeping in mind. Just in case you run into problems, this might be something that you need to do. So we hope to be able to provide kind of a step-by-step guide for how to do this with screenshots that should help you out as well. Also, just some other things to look out for. Nitan showed you the background tab. Reminder when you get started to fill in all of the green cells, and a reminder that there is a check mark at the bottom that says we have reviewed and updated the information on the background tab to ensure it is accurate. Always make sure that that checkbox is checked. If it's not, you won't be able to enter any data. So if you open up your tool and you're like, I can't do anything, check quickly to see if that box is checked. You should only have to check it once, but I will note that if you send us your tool and we upgrade you to the newest version, we will confirm that this box is checked, but it's something you might want to just look for, because when we convert it to the new version, it will need to be rechecked. So again, you complete the background tab once, and then you kind of just leave it alone. On your entry form, you'll want to look at the date that the first household member enrolled in JPEID. You'll really want to make sure to get this one right. And once you get it right the first time, don't change it. That could mess up your data moving forward. And also, as Mutan just mentioned, related to the add month feature, you do really want to make sure that you fill in the age at JPEID enrollment. And that'll make sure that the data works correctly and that you can use that add month feature to copy your data. Some reminders, the instructions and background tabs, think of these as your prep work to get started. You enter it once, you leave it. Your menu tab is your home base. You'll spend most of your time here. This is where you add or update the household data. And so the menu tab is where you get to the entry form, which is where you really update that data. Again, your fiscal year tabs are based on your fiscal year start date that you identify. And again, those quarterly reports and rent report reports are static. So you have to run the report enable in order to see that tab appear. And again, we know that this Excel-based tool it can be tricky, it can be pretty taxing on your computer's capacity. So just a few common approaches just to make sure if your Excel crashes or if you get an error. Some reminders here. Make sure you save your work frequently. So if you do have a crash, you don't lose the data that you have entered. Good practice to close any other programs that you have open on your computer when you're using the JPEID tool. This just kind of reduces the chances that there will be a crash. Be sure to accept the security criteria, so make it a trusted document, make sure you enable macros. Again, you should only have to do this once, but always something to keep in mind. Again, make sure you check that box on the background tab, acknowledging that you've reviewed the information. Should only have to do that once, but a good thing to check. And then once you've kind of gone down your list and done those checks, a good thing to do would be to close the tool, reopen it, and hopefully things will get better. So, and then if that is not the case, you of course can always reach out to us at jobsplusreporting@icf.com, and we will take a look at it for you and help you troubleshoot. So I know we have quite a few questions in the chat box, so we're going to turn to those now. And this kind of launches our Q&A portion of the session. So what we will also do is you can feel free to continue to type your questions in the chat, but we will also let you guys have the ability to unmute yourselves. And when you do that, you can ask your question verbally. Do note that now you also have the ability to turn on your camera, so pay attention to whether it is on or off based on what you choose. And so yeah, why don't we take a couple of more questions from the chat, and then we'll see if any folks have questions they'd like us to work with. So let me figure out where we left off. So a question from Martha. Can you correct records retroactively in the tool? So for example, if there are retroactive changes in income. And again, I believe the short answer to that is yes. You go back into the household, you go back into the entry form, you identify the household, you identify the month in which that data changed, and you can update the data. Anything to add on that, Deepa?
The only thing to add is, again, you have that ability. Just be careful to the extent that you can to add accurate data the first time, because it does, reduce the chances for calculation errors later on. But it does happen. We get it. And so that's why that feature is available if you do need to make those kinds of changes.
And acknowledging that that could either be for something that was miscaptured previously, or if there is some sort of retroactive change that we need to capture. So next question, when deleting records, should they be completely deleted? And I think the answer is the best way to, if you really truly need to delete a record or delete a household, you should do it in the way that Nitan demonstrated, where you actually go into the menu tab and fully delete the record. Does that answer the question, Ashana?
I thought, Laura, for this section, or this question, I should say, if possible, I'd like to share my screen again.
See, sometime in our tool, we had some files that we had tried to delete, and then we go back and it was still there. So that's why I was asking, when you delete it, is it deleting it from the complete file, or is it deleting it from that current year?
Yeah,
That was
so
my question.
yeah, sorry, that's a great question. I'm going to share the tool again. When you delete records, you have a couple of different options. So if you want to remove them from every single fiscal year, you'll choose the one that I chose today, which is, delete the entire record for this household. But sometimes you accidentally added a month for that household and you didn't want to do that, or maybe you keyed in a lot of wrong information for that household for that month, so you just want to delete that month. And you can do that by this feature here. And then sometimes you can also choose records for multiple months, and then you can specify which month. So it really depends on what makes sense for that, situation. But it sounds like in your situation, it's definitely that first one of deleting the entire record of the household. Ashana, I hope I'm saying your name right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If after using the delete records feature and you choose that first option, it's still not working, definitely follow up with us after the webinar, and we could try to troubleshoot that issue.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Nitan. Moving right along, I see the question from Peter in Philadelphia. I think it may pay to shift you guys from that previous version over to 37, so we can be in touch about doing that and whether that makes sense. So thanks for raising it, and we will make a note to follow up with you about potentially moving you to a newer version of the tool that you've got. All right. A question from Denise, and I wonder, this may be another one that I may shoot over to Isaac or someone from HUD. The question is about what do we do if the PHA does not conduct interims or increased incomes? I can certainly answer that from a technical perspective of it. I believe it likely means that your data is not going to change from month to month or quarter to quarter, but there may be some nuances to how to handle that.
Could you repeat the question for me, Laura?
So the question is, what do we do when the PHA does not conduct interims or increased income?
Okay, I think this is referring to, if I'm understanding the question correctly, there's some housing authorities that do not do annual recertifications, particularly the MTWs. And so what it's a local policy decision. There are implications for waiting to do it, and there's also implications for doing it as an interim recertification, which also is always always have the ability and authority to do, but I think it's agency by agency situation. That's probably a question better for like a more in-depth one-on-one conversation. But the house authorities that do interims, excuse me, recertifications that are not annual, they sometimes elect to do an interim so that the resident gets the full benefit of JPEID, so that when there is another annual recertification, there's not like a big jump in the well, it's not annual, but 2 or 3 years down the road, whenever that is, if it's before the grant ends, there's a potential that residents' rent will go up if they hadn't already enrolled in JPID, based on whatever the current baseline is. So there's some strategic advantages to doing it as an interim research, just so that folks can get the baseline set. Even though your policy probably is to do it later, but I think if you want to talk about it in more detail, send me an email and we can talk through it more.
Thanks, Isaac. Right, I thought I saw some hands raised in the participant list. So are there any folks who want to chime in and ask any questions verbally?
I did have a question about modifying the baseline when you're adding a new person to the tool. Say they may have enrolled in the program last month and you are just putting them on the tool this month when they started working. So at that point, could you just be on the one screen and modify their baseline? Or would it be better to just go back and add the months previously? I don't know if you understand.
I think that makes sense. I think in general, the question is, once you've created a household and started the enrollment month, like in an initial month, can you add that household to a month previously, to the month prior? And I'm not entirely sure on the answer to that. We may want to, if that's a situation that you have, we may want to kind of dig in just to make sure that we're advising you correctly on how to do that and making sure we're not messing up your baseline data in the process.
Okay.
Anything to add, Nathan?
Yeah, I think I have a general understanding of the question and a way to address that. My recommendation in that use case, and it's really not that hard when it's only 1 month like you're mentioning, but there's another question in the chat about, there's some folks we didn't enter since last year, and so that's that same type of situation, Nick. What I would recommend is to enter information for the first month that they were in that program, just like I did during today's session. So you'll use the entry form to enter that data. Then I would use the copy records feature, and actually I'll share my screen so that it's a little bit easier for folks to know what I'm talking about here. After you enter their household information for that very first month into the entry form, after that, I really strongly recommend you use, in that case, the copy records feature, so that you can then add that particular household, or maybe a number of households like that other case in the chat, and copy them over onto the months that you don't have data for, and then again go in the entry form and make edits as needed. So I wouldn't enter data now and then try to edit the baseline. I would physically enter the baseline into the system using the entry form, copy records, and then make edits as needed. Does that answer your question, Nick?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other folks want to chime in verbally?
Hey, my mic working? Okay. I'm just wondering if I'm understanding it. With the add month feature, when you set the parameters and click that, it copies the data does it copy the data for every household that you have entered into entered with the entry form?
I can take this one on, Laura, as well. Yes, Jeffrey, it does. And I did see your question in the chat. So when you do the add month feature, it's going to copy all the household data that you have from one month to the next. If there are households whose data wasn't there in the previous month, it's just not going to copy anything over. It's just going to be a blank 0. But if there was data, it's going to copy it over to every single month. If you're looking to copy just a few households and not all of them, that's when you can use that copy records feature that I just showed a moment ago so that you can have a comma separated field. But the add month feature is going to add all of the households you have in the tool from one month to the next. Does that make sense?
It does. And if I can piggyback a little bit with
Sure.
with the other one, it does say or delineate with a comma. Is there a limit on how many households you can put into that field?
Not that I know of. So we're still new to the tool. We're still, learning it. But I use that feature with like 70 households, and it worked just fine. So not that I know of, but we can certainly circle back afterwards if we do end up finding that that's the case.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a pretty good segue to a question I see in the chat from Sarah about when copying one month over to the next. Is the correct approach to do that for all households and then go into individual records and adjust if the income and rent amounts have changed. And I think, Sarah, you got it. That is a very good way of doing that. So it means you copy everything over and then you only need to update the records that have changes in one. Okay. I'm going to keep looking in our chat for some more questions, but feel free to chime in verbally if you have other questions you'd like to ask. And I see a question from Laura. Does each resident enrolled in JPEID have to be entered, or would it just be the residents that are employed? I believe the answer is if you are enrolling a resident in JPEID, that you would want to get them entered into the tool, even if they are not employed. So I believe that this tool is designed to capture everybody that you have enrolled in JPEID. And it looks like other folks have now that I'm scrolling down, Tawana, thank you for verifying that is what you do. A kind of technical question about Excel. Do I need to have Excel license to run the worksheet accurately? So you do need to have Excel installed on your computer in order to run the worksheet. Otherwise, you won't be able to open it. It is Excel based. And so I think most standard laptops and PCs have Excel installed, but if not, you'll want to definitely get Excel installed on your computer in order to access the tool. Right, and we do have a request for a manual or for reference or a step-by-step. That is definitely something we are working on. We can work on pulling together and making sure you have kind of a reference sheet to go along with using the tool. Okay. Let me see what other questions. Anybody else want to chime in verbally?
I had a question about, we had a resident who had some information that was entered incorrectly and it was deleted. When I went to enter her current information, it's looking like she's a new enrollee when I go to enter the information into the tool. But when I look back on the prior years, her information is still there. So when I entered her information, it looked like it was going to override over all of her previous information. So I didn't enter it because I didn't want the current information to override what was already in there. So I'm not sure how I should enter her now.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Nitan?
I
If
do.
not, we can certainly follow up with you as well. Take a look
Yeah,
at it.
that to me sounds like more of a follow-up just to understand the full context of the error. My gut is saying that the error occurred because of the way that the record was deleted. And so we'd need to just look at how that record was deleted and be able to better support you to make sure that that data is not overriding itself. So we'll follow up with you afterwards and try to help troubleshoot that issue. But thanks for raising it.
And I see a question from Martha. Is the tool available for training purposes for ourselves to try out before using the real one? And so, yeah, the answer is sure. We can provide you with a latest version of the tool if you are not already using it. So that, we can certainly provide you with a blank one that matches the, requirements for your grant. And you can play around with it, and you can sort of do that outside of your actual tool that you are using. Know that it is an Excel-based tool, so if you wanted to take a version of that tool, save it under a different name that says test version, not real data for training purposes, you can certainly do that and use it, and then have be able to kind of play around in the sandbox, if you will, without messing up your real data or your real tool. So if you need a copy of the tool, if you want a blank one, just email us and we can send it over to you. Any other questions?
I can go ahead. I believe we were given version 34. We had to turn in our workbook, and we're given version 34 in September. Should we be at version 37?
So at our understanding, we know that version 37 is the most recent version. If your version 34 is working for you, don't necessarily need to update it. But if you approach us with any kind of TA issue, or if there's a need, one of the first things we will do is convert you over to the newest version. So if for peace of mind, you will feel better that you're using the most current version, feel free to send that over to us and we'll upgrade it.
Thank you.
So I see.
Laura, if I may add, the last two versions were bug repairs. If you got an iPhone, you get an iOS update just about every week, but your phone can still work. But if you are running into any bugs, it's probably better to the ICF do the conversion for you.
And I do see some comments and questions from you, Samantha. And I know that your tool has been misbehaving is a good way to say it. We definitely have that on our list and are digging in to try to figure out what's going on there. So we do thank you for your patience, and we're continuing to work through that and try to figure out a solution for you to get that working properly. There's a question in here from Beatrice. asking about training or material regarding eligibility on JPEID enrollments. So can full-time students enroll? Can anyone who is not employed enroll? So I think those are questions that we don't have answers to on the JPEID tool technical side of things. So I will flag that one, and we can certainly do some follow-up to get you in the right direction to access those resources.
Is it all right if I answer it really quickly? It's an easy answer. So it's, Job Plus essentially is tracking anyone who's an adult 18 or older, regardless of their status as a student or what have you. The only prerequisite to enroll in JPEID is two. One, you must live at the target site because the benefit is assigned to that particular AMP. And then the second is they just have to be on lease, so if they're an adult, they're on lease, they live at that site, then they can enroll at any time.
Thanks, Isaac. So a couple of kind of logistical things. Question, who can we contact if we run across a very specific issue with the tool? That's us. The best way to reach us is jobsplusreporting@icf.com. That initial question would be fielded by your assigned TA provider, who is either me, Allie Payton, or Catherine Owl, depending on your cohort. And they will try to address, or we will engage, more advanced support as we need to get that specific issue worked out for you. So jobsplusreporting@icf.com is your first place to go if you have any issues with the tool. I see a couple folks are interested in getting just a blank version of the tool to test it out. And questions about conversion. Yes, so we would do, if a tool does need to be converted to version 37, we will do that for you. The historical data will all be transferred into the new tool. You would not have to re-enter all of your older data. So it's kind of an automated process that just gets you into the new version with the bug fixes that come along with it. All right. Any other, in our last couple of minutes, any questions anyone wants to ask verbally? I see a question from Desiree. Do we send you the current version to convert? Yes. So as we said, you don't, if you're working in a version prior to 37, you do not have to have it converted. But if you are having trouble, if there are any issues that you're seeing, send us the current version and then we will convert it to the new version. I did notice a question that was in the chat about timing for next, deadline for submitting data and collecting JPEID data with the tool. So I am going to go ahead and switch over to this slide that kind of talks about what's next. So, thank you again for your patience as we've kind of come on board as your TA providers. We're really looking forward to getting you all caught up with data collection and getting back on schedule. We do have another webinar scheduled for May 25th that will go into the details of grant reporting and how that's all going to work over the next few months. We are continuing to reach out to folks with needs about the JPEID tool. So if you're on our list, if you've already reached out to us, know that we are actively working on it. If you have not reached out to us and are having issues, do so, and we'll add you to our list and keep working our way through to get you all squared away. The next thing we will be doing after that May 25th call is when data collection for Q4 2022 and Q1 2023 will begin, at which point we will do data review and analysis of all that data once you get it submitted, and then we will move on to collecting data for Q2. So that would happen after the end of June when Q2 is finished, and we will move right into data collection for Q2. So again, for TA about the JPEID tool or reporting in general, do email us at jobsplusreporting@icf.com, and we'll be happy to help you out. So we have just a couple more minutes left. I wanted to turn back to the participants and see if anyone has any other burning questions that we can hopefully answer in the last couple of minutes. Well, if not, I hope that this was helpful. And again, we're really, really excited to be working with you guys and supporting you on your reporting. And I think with that, we can wrap things up. And do remember, reach out to us via email with any issues you're having or requests for TA. So, thanks, everyone. And on behalf of the Jobs Plus Reporting TA team, thank you, and we will connect with you all soon.